Why you assume the worst about everything I do? I never said I didn't trust you. You didn't have to say it. It was written all over your face. I sat down next to him on the couch. Owen is my friend. That's all. I'm sorry I didn't mention inviting him, but I honestly didn't think it was a big deal. Nate closed his laptop and looked at me. It's a big deal to me. Why? Because he ran his hands through his hair, looking frustrated. Because you light up when you talk about him. Because our daughter calls him Uncle Owen. Because you've been different lately, distant, and now I know why. Different how? You're always on your phone, you work late more often, you seem, I don't know, like you're somewhere else even when you're here. I felt a stab of guilt, but I pushed it away. I've been working on a big case, you know that, and I'm not always on my phone. Aren't you? We stared at each other for a long moment. I wanted to reassure him, to make things right between us, but I also felt defensive. I hadn't done anything wrong. Having coffee with an old friend wasn't cheating. Texting wasn't cheating. Nate was being unreasonable. I think you should talk to someone, I said finally, about your jealousy issues. Nate's face went blank. My jealousy issues? Yes, it's not healthy, Nate. It's affecting our marriage. He stared at me for another moment, then opened his laptop again. I'll keep that in mind. I went to bed feeling frustrated and misunderstood. As I lay in the dark, listening to Nate's steady breathing, I thought about Owen's text message. He wanted to catch up, to hear about my life. He missed talking to me. Maybe coffee wouldn't be such a bad idea after all. When was the last time Nate had complimented me on something other than dinner or keeping the house clean? When was the last time he'd looked at me the way Owen was looking at me right now? I should go, I said, standing up quickly. Ava will be wondering where I am. Of course, I didn't mean to keep you so long. Owen walked me to the front door, his hand briefly touching my lower back as he reached around me to unlock it. Thanks for coming by. It was really good to see you. You too. I stepped outside into the cool evening air, feeling flustered and confused. Emily, Owen called after me, if you ever need to talk about anything, I'm here. You know that, right? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and hurried to my car. The drive home took 15 minutes, but I sat in the driveway for another 10, trying to collect myself. I felt guilty, but I also felt more alive than I had in months. Owen saw me as more than just a wife and mother. He saw me as a woman worth pursuing, worth caring about. My phone rang, making me jump. Nate's name appeared on the screen. Hey, I answered, trying to sound normal. Hey, where are you? Ava's asking for you. I looked at the clock on my dashboard and realized it was almost 8:30. Sorry, I got held up at work. I'm just pulling into the driveway now. Okay, she's in her pajamas, but she wanted to wait for you to read her bedtime story. I'll be right in. I hung up and sat for another moment, hating myself for lying, but not knowing what else to do. How could I explain that I'd spent the evening at my ex-boyfriend's gym, talking about my marriage and feeling more connected to him than I had to my husband in years? Inside, Ava was waiting in her bedroom with a pile of books, her hair damp from her bath and her favorite stuffed elephant tucked under her arm. Mommy, you're home. Daddy said you were working late again. I was, sweetheart, but I'm here now. I kissed her forehead and settled onto her bed. What are we reading tonight? As I read about princesses and dragons, I tried to focus on Ava's sleepy voice asking questions about the story. But part of my mind kept drifting back to Owen's office, to the way he'd looked at me when he said I deserved better. After Ava fell asleep, I found Nate in the living room watching the news. He looked up when I entered, but didn't smile. Long day? He asked. Yeah, the Morrison case is more complicated than we thought. The lie came easily, which scared me. You should eat something. I saved you a plate. Thanks, but I grabbed something at the office. Another lie. I'm going to take a shower and head to bed. Emily? Nate's voice stopped me at the bottom of the stairs. Yeah? Is everything okay? You seem, I don't know, distracted lately? For a moment, I considered telling him the truth, about feeling invisible, about needing more than our routine life together. about Owen making me remember who I used to be. But looking at Nate's concerned face, I couldn't find the words. I'm fine, just tired. Okay, good night. Good night. In the shower, I let the hot water wash away the guilt and confusion, at least temporarily. I told myself I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd had coffee with an old friend. We'd talked, that was all. But as I lay in bed next to my sleeping husband, I couldn't stop thinking about Owen's question. When was the last time someone had made me feel special? She kissed Ava's cheek and complimented the table setting, but I noticed her scanning the living room with sharp eyes. "Everything looks lovely, dear," she said to me, though her smile seemed forced. My parents arrived 15 minutes later, my father carrying 2 bottles of wine and my mother with a homemade apple pie. Paul Valeska was a quiet man who'd worked as an electrician for 30 years before retiring, and he'd always been kind to Nate. My mother had died 3 years earlier, so it was just Dad now, looking a little lost without her but trying to stay involved in our lives. Sam and her boyfriend Derek were the last to arrive, fashionably late as always. Sam looked beautiful in a red dress that showed off her figure, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. Derek was a nice enough guy, though I sometimes wondered if Sam was settling for him. "Sorry we're late," Sam announced, hugging me tightly. Derek couldn't decide what wine to bring. "Any wine is good wine," my father said with a chuckle, accepting Derek's offering of a decent Chardonnay. We gathered in the living room for drinks and appetizers while I put the finishing touches on dinner. The conversation flowed easily at first. Paul and my father discussed baseball, Sam entertained everyone with stories from her job at the marketing firm, and Ava showed off her latest artwork to anyone who would pay attention. But I noticed Linda watching me carefully, and when I caught her eye, she didn't look away. "Emily," she said during a lull in conversation, "I heard you had quite the birthday party for Ava a few weeks ago?" My stomach tightened. "Yes, it was wonderful. Ava had a great time." "I'm sure she did. Though I was surprised to hear that Owen Sutter was there." Linda's tone was conversational, but there was steel underneath it. The room went quiet. Sam looked confused, my father raised an eyebrow, and Nate's jaw tightened. "Owen's an old friend," I said carefully. "He's very fond of Ava." "An old friend," Linda repeated. "That's interesting. Margaret Collins mentioned she saw your car at his gym last week, after hours." My heart started pounding. Margaret Collins was one of Linda's bridge partners, a busybody who lived downtown near Owen's studio. "I stopped by to say hello. He was working late." "I see." Linda took a sip of her wine, her eyes never leaving my face. "It's nice that you've maintained such a close friendship with your ex-boyfriend." "Mother," Nate said quietly. "What's going on?" Sam asked, looking between Linda and me with growing concern. "Nothing's going on," I said quickly, forcing a laugh. "Linda's making something out of nothing. Owen and I are friends, that's all." "Friends who meet after hours at his gym. Friends who have intimate conversations at children's birthday parties." Intimate conversations? I felt my face getting hot. We talked about Ava's presence and the weather. If that's intimate to you, then I don't know what to say. "Ladies," my father interjected gently, "perhaps we should—" "No, Dad, it's fine." I stood up, my hands shaking with anger. Apparently, Linda has some concerns about my friendships that she'd like to air in front of everyone. "I have concerns about my son's marriage," Linda said calmly, "and about my granddaughter's stability." "My marriage is fine," I snapped. "Maybe you should mind your own business." "Emily," my father said sharply, "that's enough." I looked around the table at all the faces staring at me, some shocked, some disappointed, some angry. Ava was crying quietly, and Sam was trying to comfort her. "You know what? You're right. That's enough." I grabbed my purse from the counter. "I'm going for a drive. When I come back, I expect everyone except my daughter and my husband to be gone." I headed for the door, ignoring Nate calling my name. "Mommy, don't go." Ava's voice broke my heart, but I couldn't stay in that room for another second. I drove aimlessly for an hour, my hands shaking and tears streaming down my face. Eventually, I found myself parked outside Owen's gym. The lights were on in his office, and I could see his silhouette through the window. Before I could talk myself out of it, I walked inside. Emily, what are you doing here? Owen looked up from his computer, immediately concerned when he saw my face. What's wrong? Everything, I said, and started crying again. He came around the desk and pulled me into his arms, and for the first time in weeks, I felt safe. I stayed at Owen's gym for 2 hours that night, crying on his shoulder and telling him everything that had happened at dinner. He listened without judgment, handed me tissues, and told me I deserved better than being attacked by my in-laws and unsupported by my husband. When I finally went home, the house was dark except for the porch light. Everyone had left, and Nate was waiting for me in the living room, still wearing his dinner clothes but with his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up. "How's Ava?" I asked, dropping my purse by the door. Upset. She didn't understand why everyone was fighting or why you left. His voice was quiet, controlled. I told her you needed some air and that everything would be okay. I'm sorry she had to see that. Your mother shouldn't have. Don't. Nate held up his hand. Don't blame my mother for what happened tonight. She ambushed me, Nate, in front of my family. She asked you about Owen. You're the one who lost control. I stared at him, feeling like he'd slapped me. Lost control? Your mother accused me of having an affair in front of my father and my sister, and you think I lost control? Did she accuse you of having an affair? Or did she ask why you're spending time alone with your ex-boyfriend? It's the same thing, is it? The way he asked the question made my stomach drop. What's that supposed to mean? Nate stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our dark backyard. I've been thinking a lot over the past few weeks. About us, about what's been happening. Nate, let me finish. He turns back to me, and I was shocked by how tired he looked. You're right that I've been jealous. You're right that I've been questioning your friendship with Owen, but I don't think I'm being paranoid. You are being paranoid. Owen and I are just friends. Are you? He pulled out his phone and scrolled through something. Because I've been paying attention, Emily. You've worked late 12 times in the past month. I called your office 3 of those nights, and you'd already left. My heart started pounding. I sometimes stop for coffee or run errands. On the nights you said you were working late, Nate's voice was getting harder. You lied to me, Emily, multiple times. I didn't lie. I just didn't mention every stop I made. Where did you go? I couldn't answer. How could I tell him? I'd been meeting Owen for coffee, for walks, for long conversations that made me feel more alive than I'd felt in years. Where did you go? Nate repeated. Sometimes I met Owen for coffee, to talk. To talk about what? Life, work, nothing important. Nothing important, Nate laughed bitterly. Your marriage wasn't important enough to mention these coffee dates to your husband, but they were important enough to lie about. I wasn't lying. You were lying. For the first time, Nate raised his voice. Every time you said you were working late when you were really with Owen, you were lying. Every time I asked if something was going on and you said no, you were lying. I felt tears starting again. It's not what you think. What do I think, Emily? You think I'm having an affair. Are you? The question hung in the air between us. I wanted to say no, to reassure him, to fix this mess I'd created. But the truth was more complicated than that. Not physically, I said finally. Nate's face went white. Not physically? What does that mean? It means I haven't slept with him. I haven't kissed him. I haven't done anything physical. But I closed my eyes, knowing I was about to destroy everything. But I have feelings for him, and I think he has feelings for me. The silence that followed was deafening. When I opened my eyes, Nate was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. How long? He asked. How long what? How long have you had feelings for him? I don't know. Since he moved back to town, maybe. Since we started talking again. 2 years. It's not like I planned it, Nate. It just happened. It just happened. He ran his hands through his hair. You've been in love with another man for 2 years, and it just happened. I'm not in love with him. What would you call it? I didn't have an answer for that. Nate walked to the mantelpiece and picked up a framed photo of the three of us from last Christmas. Ava was sitting on his lap, and I was leaning against his shoulder, all of us smiling at the camera. I keep looking at this picture, Nate said quietly, trying to remember when you stopped looking at me like this. I confessed everything. The coffee dates, texts, how Owen made me feel alive. Are you in love with him? Nate asked. I don't know. Do you want to be with me? I want to be with you. That's not the same thing. Then came the question that destroyed me. Is Ava mine? Of course. She has green eyes. Neither of us do. Nate handed me an envelope. DNA test. Tomorrow. I stared at the paperwork, realizing my life had been crumbling for 2 years. Now I'd discover what it would cost me. The DNA results arrived Thursday morning. My hands shook signing for them. When Nate opened the envelope at lunch, his face went dark. 0% probability. I'm not Ava's father. She's still your daughter, I whispered. She's Owen's daughter. His voice was flat. You cheated 6 weeks before our wedding. One drunken mistake. That created a child who isn't mine. Please, we can work through this. You're calling Owen today. I've already filed for divorce. Later, telling 5-year-old Ava that Daddy wasn't her biological father broke us all. 6 months later, the judge's gavel ended my marriage. I'd built my life on lies. Now, everything had fallen apart.